stories like crazy. Because everyone has mental health, and everyone has a story. And sometimes they're crazy. Join Lori Lane Murphy and me, Adriana Prosser, as we talk about dealing with, struggling with, and managing mental health with storytellers that share their true life story. Get in the conversation and talk with us on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe on SoundCloud and iTunes. Now, let's smash some stigma. Today we're catching up with Lori, who's been on a grand adventure with Ontario Shores Centre. She has become an ambassador of hope for mental health. And what does that mean? Well, she's going to tell us all about it. Let's have a listen.
I told you that I got this gig doing what's called an ambassador of hope.
Which sounds epic in itself.
Right? I mean, who doesn't want to be an ambassador of hope? Who doesn't want to be an ambassador of anything?
Seriously. It's like an invisible crown.
Totally. Oh, that sound happens when I come in the room. So I do a lot of volunteering and have a really soft spot for Ontario Shores, Centre of Mental Health Services. I think that's the correct. Yes, it is. Ontario Shores. And earlier on, a couple of years ago, when I was a patient in their partial hospitalization program. So what that basically meant was I was an outpatient, but I got to participate in 12 weeks, it might even have been a bit longer, of these fantastic coping skills and mindfulness and dealing with dual diagnosis. And you had this opportunity. It was like going to college every day. And it was the opportunity to be with people who were at all varying ends of the mental health / illness spectrum. And so you'd go and it was like an 8 to 4 day. You choose your classes and you go and you meet these people that you think, I would never speak to these people. And then you get over yourself, right? And the humor and the laughs and the sheer will of people to be well. The will to be well. Like, you can't underestimate it, truly. And so the hospital itself is turning 100 years this year. Wow. So last year they put a call out for 6 ambassadors because they're doing a whole bunch of events this year to promote this 100 years of mental health. And they're very much about research now and very much about forwarding this whole idea of people living with mental illness. Because there's always been a talk of recovery, right?
Right.
But what if the living with it and making it make sense in your life? That's kind of how I approach it, because my bipolar disorder is not going to go away, but it certainly isn't driving the truck, because that's what it feels like sometimes. It's certainly not driving the truck. So how do we live with this sort of house guest that will never leave? So that's kind of part of my message. So Ontario Shores really helped me to, I think, radically, as they say, radically accept what is. Because I think that's where we stumble in most things in life, right? It's the fighting against.
Yeah, instead of acceptance.
Yeah. Or I want to know what the reason is. I want to know just how come, and then suddenly 5 years goes by, or suddenly, you're in another incident, or you're in a depressive episode and you can't get out of the depressive episode because you keep saying, why am I in a depressive episode? So being able to find new ways to cope without feeling sorry for yourself, because I feel sorry for myself a lot.
Yeah.
I think probably most of the listeners can relate to some degree. It's just how much are we willing to admit that? Because you want to kick the stones and say, this isn't cool. So I'm allowed as an ambassador, so I got chosen as one of the 6, which is a real honor, to basically go out to these events or participate in these really cool activities promoting all the great work of this amazing hospital. Because it has been chugging along for 100 years and doing its darndest to dispel the myths of the nut house. Because it used to be. 100 years ago, it was the Whitby Nut House. We were threatened with that as children, not 100 years ago. But when I was a child, my grandmother used to say to my brother and I, be careful, or that's where you end up. And I tell people that and they laugh. The folks at the hospital, it's like, yeah, we know. And then they proceed to rhyme off a dozen derogatory names of this place. So the ambassador of hope is basically taking 6 people like myself with different stories and saying, look, I have a family. I contribute to the community. I have a sense of humor about myself. I have pets. I like to do stuff that doesn't involve mental illness.
I have a full life.
I have a full life. And I know when this kind of all started for me, it was trying to separate the person from the illness. And again, I think most listeners can relate to that. Or if you're a caregiver, how do I remember or see this person for the person that they are, who happens to be carrying along this giant Samsonite bag of other stuff? And what's the beauty in their life, this mental illness or mental disorder or situation notwithstanding? What do they bring to the table, and what's the beauty in that? And what do I bring to the table, and what's the beauty in that? And that's an ongoing, I hate the word journey. You know I hate the word journey.
But it is.
What else can I use? I don't know another word. Adventure time. Adventure. Yes. Quest for wellness. Oh, there's another podcast, right?
There's a t-shirt in there somewhere.
There totally is. And FYI, if we get this up, speaking of t-shirts, come to our Stories Like Crazy Live at SoCap Theater on May 9th to celebrate Mental Health Awareness Week.
It's true.
And we will have t-shirts. Maybe there will be a quest for wellness. I don't know. Or will to be well. I don't know. These are probably all used. But so it's kind of a thrill, and I found a way to approach this job, as you will, as a person who just knows some stuff that maybe you don't know about something that you don't really know about, but you're kind of interested in. That's how I look at mental illness. Just as if you were to go to an art conference and you want to learn about architecture, or you want to, I'm going to listen to somebody talk about it who has a little bit of insight, and then I'm going to walk away and go, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that before. And I think that's really what the role of the ambassador is. It's not celebrating the illness. It's celebrating the person who manages the illness.
Nice.
Yeah.
And where do you go? Like, is it just at the shores?
No, I go out into the community. And for example, a couple of weeks ago, so what happens is organizations, generally locally so far, but it's certainly going to reach across the province. That's the idea, to sort of, again, the word celebrate the great work that they do, because it's, hard to get that work forwarded if nobody knows about it. So organizations can contact Ontario Shores, their communications department, and say, you know what, we're having this thing and we want somebody to come and talk. So I've done probably a half a dozen talks this year already. And my approach, and also because of our approach here at Stories Like Crazy, is embracing the crazy and also really smashing stigma. Because you can't eat the whole elephant in the room. So our piece at Stories Like Crazy is, so what about this stigma thing? And how do we just have conversations that don't have people taking a giant step back? But if people do take a giant step back, then that's for them. One of the things I've learned over the last couple of years is to get off my soapbox a little bit. I can't ram it down your throat, and I can't make you support me.
Right.
And ambassadorship has shown me that a little bit. You can't make people comfortable, eh? Like
Yeah.
I don't know if that's in your experience too with this whole thing. There's some people that are your people you can talk to about it, but you can still love people that don't get it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Which I didn't really know that.
It's hard. It's definitely hard, because I just want people to be my people. But I also think that being consistently you and not then seeing that those people are uncomfortable or not good with it, that you then put on a mask for them or change for them, that's not serving anyone. And that is also hard, that you have to be authentically you even when it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because you never know that, like, 2 weeks, 2 years, 20 years, they call you up to be like, I know you're the person I can talk to about this. And that's happened to me.
Yes.
And, I've lost friends and then regained them over time, because they were like, oh yeah, Adri would be cool with this.
So now, because this is, again, Stories Like Crazy, we always wind up we start in one direction, but this is so great because now I'm thinking about what you just said. And I guess it would depend on the person, but how do you feel about that when you know that someone has sort of hot potatoed you, right? And then, like you said, it could be 2 weeks, 2 years, 20 years, who knows? And they come to you. Is there any resentment, or is it just, okay, it's time. They're here and they need me.
So far, it's been the latter, because I think that if I were in their shoes, how awful would it feel to finally have the courage to say something about it, and then you have a door slam in your face,
Yes.
either literally or metaphorically,
Yes.
and just how crushing that would be, and that's where I have to learn my grace, and that's you know, like I don't have a lot of grace. Have you met me? Like I'm very much a redhead and bold and loud, and I'm a human muppet. And
I love your Muppet.
Love it. Thank you. See, you are my people.
I love your Muppet. I love her.
I sit here with well, today's one of the lesser days.
You've got Muppet socks on.
I do have lots of Muppet.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have at least 3 colors on.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, I mean, that is a grown-up Adri. Like, I think young Adri,
Yeah.
before Doomsday, before Andrew passed, and before a lot of work on who I was and who I wanted to be happened, and that is my journey.
Oh God. It's your
That's
quest.
my quest. Quest for wellness.
Yes.
TM
Oh God,
that
that's
shit.
really lame though.
Yeah, super
so
lame.
bad.
We put it in a Comic Sans font. That would be great.
Totally. Oh my God, and some sort of electric bolts and stuff.
My God,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Okay.
So worst. But then, like, again, I want to be that person, and that's something that's my prerogative and like part of my journey.
Yeah.
Right now, but I mean, not always. Like, I definitely
I struggle.
let people go and being like, you know, there's the door. Here's the finger. Bye bye. Sit and spin. Like I've had those moments.
That's beautiful.
But those are the people who are mean and malicious and, you know, are toxic and psychic vampires and are not there to be.
You're saying some great stuff. I should be
man.
writing this down.
Write that shit down. But like, there's a difference. And I think the thing that I'm learning the most right now in therapy is boundaries, and learning the difference between those people, that there are those people who will boomerang.
Yeah.
And they are the ones that deserve the benefit of the doubt because they weren't ready in their journey.
Yes.
Listen to me, this is ridiculous.
Stop
Let's all
saying
put this
that.
in a fucking Hallmark card. That you know, like that boomerang is fine because they finally they've come around to understanding that what I'm saying isn't a personal attack on them.
Right.
And that, like, when we're talking about mental health and mental illness, it's not about singling out people, it's not about shaming them, it's not about judging them.
Yes.
It's about putting it on the table and being like, here's my ugly, hope you like it, right?
Yeah.
And that makes people uncomfortable.
It does. And I also think that there's a certain amount of, and if we're not careful, that's where the sanctimonious comes in. If you become the person that's somehow, you're not as enlightened as I am because you have not suffered. You do not know the tragedy that it is to live with voices, or to live with such a mood disorder that you're swinging from the chandeliers one minute and you're in the pit from hell. And it's not about comparison. And I've said kind of all my life, when I've, you know, if different friends have talked about, I don't know, things like divorce or loss, or we as human beings have such a weird desire to compare pain. Just like we compare everything else, right? Yeah. How much do you have? Well, you make more money than I do, or you have better hair than I do, or it's that, you know, that constant game. And it doesn't change when mental illness enters the picture, because now that we're talking about it, it almost becomes, and I've said this a bunch of times on the cast, is it's the new black. So you're nobody unless you have fill in the blank. And so for me as an ambassador, when I'm giving a talk, I'm very, very cognizant of I'm very cognizant of, please don't come off sounding like a crazy know-it-all.
Yeah.
Right? This is just my story. And if there are pieces of my story that you like, or pieces that you discard, or pieces that move you or anger you or make you sad, happy, glad, that's the job or the role of the ambassador. That these are fully fleshed out human beings that happen to be living with something. And not all mental illness is rooted in trauma. Some of it is rooted in biology. Some of it just is. And I think for me, one of the, and I wouldn't call it a barrier, it's kind of like a road bump, a speed bump, is I will occasionally run into a person that wants to know, well, what was the trauma?
Yeah. What's the reason?
What's the reason?
What's the trigger?
And right, and I get that, because for years it's like, well, why am I like this? And part of the show, Upside Down Dad, by the way, is coming to Durham Region.
Super excited.
May 5th. Yes. But there's a piece in the show, and I don't mind sharing because the show itself is made up of so many different stories, but it's a tribute to my father, who lived with, I guess we would have called it manic depression at the time, and if he were diagnosed now, it would likely be bipolar disorder 2. So not as extreme as you can see, but certainly there. But I learned from him when I was in my 30s, and now I'm in my 50s, is that he searched his whole life for a reason. And when I finally, confront is a bit of a harsh word, when I finally approached him with, if we knew about your depression for so many years, and if we knew that there was a genetic component, why didn't you take me a little bit more seriously? Or why was I dismissed as a teenager when I was telling you there are, monkeys in my head and rats in the basement and, completely, oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And that's the defining moment where he finally said to me, I thought I gave you bad blood. And I thought, he thought his mother gave it to him, and therefore if you pretend it's not happening, like so many things in life. I mean, this is no, this is no sort of like, woo, what a revelation. I mean, human beings pretend stuff doesn't happen, really? But in my personal history, that was really important because it allowed me to see my dad as a human being, that's not just dad, who looked at the world his own way. So I think that as an ambassador, which again, it's an amazing opportunity, is just to be able to show the world in our own way that, look, if I'm standing up here and I had diabetes, or if I had cancer, or if I was any other kind of survivor, I'm a human being first. So that's what the ambassadorship kind of means to me.
That's a great message.
Thank you. Shall we put it on a t-shirt?
I think you should.
I forget what I said. We'll have to play it back.
Play it back. Play it back.
But yeah, so that's where I'm at with all of this. And it's great fun, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying meeting the people, and the people at Ontario Shores, Daryl Mathers, Chris Bovey, and I'm not even going to say Sharon's last name because it's like Alanupilopoulos, and she'll laugh when she hears that. But Amber Smith, just so many people that want this. They want this kind of opportunity for people within the hospital and in the community to engage.
So cool.
And it comes from a really sincere place, and that's why I'm happy to do it.
That is awesome. And you've got, there's some stuff, they've got their own podcast.
Yes, they do. Mindvine.
Mindvine, yeah.
And check it out, because you want to talk about sitting down with interesting people and talking about stories. It's really no different than the kind of work that we're doing here at Stories Like Crazy. And we don't compete. We welcome.
Yeah.
We welcome. We just love when we hear other podcasts doing stories and talking to people and finding shit out.
It's about continuing the conversation. Like
wherever.
The more conversations, the better, right?
Yep.
Because it will destigmatize, and it will make it, the household name of depression is fine. We're going to talk about it.
Yes.
We're going to deal with it. We're going to live with it.
We're going to live with it. And we're going to say, like, this is not a great day for me. And I'm going to stop. And this is probably very recent for me. I'm going to stop making up reasons that I can't do stuff and just say, it's not a great day for me. I wish it were.
Yeah.
Because I've missed out on lots of fun stuff. And I can't overextend myself. And I know you and I have talked about this before, because sometimes you get really, really excited and you start filling up your calendar, and then you...
yeah.
That calendar in itself can be overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to forgive myself and say, you know what? It all came from a sincere place. I wanted to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
So...
And you do when you can.
You do when you can. And what I like, the message that you gave, and you always give good messages, but is the idea that... I like the boomerang effect of friendship, that I'm here. If you bounce back and you need me, I'm still here. Mm-hmm. And you know my story, and you can use pieces of my story. And if you don't like my story, that's fine. Go off and do your thing, but I'll still be here.
Yeah.
Like, that's That's pretty amazing.
That is pretty
Because
cool.
you've listened to me recently. You've listened to me when I call you out of the blue. And we never, folks, by the way, this is like the digital era. We never talk except when we do the podcast. But we communicate all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And I phoned you very recently, and I thank you for that, because that was a moment where you think, who can I talk to that's going to, even if you don't get it, because it's very hard to get other people's pain, but you're going to empathize with me and you're going to give me some insight. And so I thank you for that. Yeah. And that's what this is all about. You're a safe place. And you always said you want to be a safe place.
Yeah.
Let's not make them buildings. Let's make them people.
People. Yes.
Hear, hear.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So don't forget, everyone, tell your friends to listen to our podcast. Because
and listen to each other's stories.
Yes.
Because your story isn't over yet, and we want to hear it.
Woo! Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes and SoundCloud. And keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook and Twitter, and let us know what you think. Until next time, your story isn't over yet, and we want to hear it.